If I could do this in under an hour, that would be impressive. I need my notes. I need my notes for these books because if you think I can remember, you have high hopes for me. Heard quite a few because I because I have heard my eye is twitching. I've got twitchy eyes, everybody. Twitchy eyes. Hello book lovers, welcome back to the channel. My name is Steph, and in today's video we will be doing my January wrap-up. If this is the first wrap-up of mine that you are watching and you want to watch any of my previous wrap-ups, I will leave the entire playlist linked down below in the description of this video for you to check out. The way that I do my wrap-ups on this channel is I start with the book that I liked the least, and then I move up to my favorite book that I read in the month. I was able to read 21 books in the month of January, so I am very happy with that number. I am just getting into the groove of things for the new year. I also feel like I rated a lot of these books pretty low. I don't know if I'm just like not in a reading mood or if I have just not been reading very good books, but I feel like a lot of these are like under a 3 stars, so I'm not super excited about that. But without further ado, let's get into my January wrap-up, starting with the worst book that I read in the month of January, and that is going to be Super Fake Love Song by David Yoon. I did read this for Tackle My TBR episode 8, so I also will leave that video linked down below in the description if you want to get my full in-depth thoughts, as I won't really speak about my thoughts on this book here. This is a YA romance where we are following our main character, Sunny, who basically gets involved in this whole lying scheme with this girl that he really wants to impress. She thinks that he is this like rock star and part of a rock band, and that is not the case. He then has to lie to her about this. So the whole book is basically him pretending that he is part of a rock band. This book was just not my cup of tea. I really just did not connect with the characters at all. Again, if you do want my full in-depth thoughts, I will leave that episode linked down below. And I ended up giving this one a 1.75 stars out of 5 and will be unhauling this one. The next book I have is The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This is an adult fantasy. It does have a lot of like gothic vibes. It's very like dark and eerie in that sense. This we are following 2 storylines. So we do follow our main character Indigo, and in the present timeline we follow her and her relationship with a character named Bridegroom. I don't think that we ever actually get his name. And then in the past timeline we are following her friendship with a character named Azure, so it does flash back to the different timelines. This book I didn't think was going to be for me, and it definitely was not. The problem that I had with this is that I first of all wish that I physically read it, because I did make a note that the quotes in here are very, very memorable quotes. Like I almost wish that I could like go back and see some of the quotes, but the problem again is that the prose in here, like purple prose, is definitely an understatement with this book. It is just so flowery, and just the, again, prose was just overwhelming to me. I am not somebody who really likes that type of writing style. I was very captivated at the beginning. I actually thought that this was going to be a huge surprise, but then I just found myself really not caring about the bridegroom's storyline. I really don't feel like that added anything really to the story, and I just found myself wanting to read the other storyline that involved Azure. I did really like the reveal and how this book ended. I thought that it was really, really well done, and I did not see it coming, although I have seen reviews since, and apparently it's quite obvious that that's what's going to happen, but I guess because the writing just really took me out of the book that I really didn't see it happening. This is definitely a case where I think I would like to reread it physically, but I did end up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars. Then I picked up Belle of the Ball by Mary Costa. This is a graphic novel. It is a YA graphic novel. So this we are following our main character, Belle Hawkins, who has a crush on this cheerleader, and she kind of like professes her love to this cheerleader, and the cheerleader's kind of like, I actually do have a girlfriend, but then they form a friendship, and then Belle ends up tutoring this girl's girlfriend and ends up in a sort of love triangle with the 2 of them. So her crush, which is the cheerleader, and then the crush's girlfriend, which is the person that she is tutoring. I typically don't rate rate graphic novels super low just because graphic novels are very enjoyable to me. They are like quick, they're easy, the message is very clear in them, but for some reason this graphic novel just really was not it. I could not stand the love interest in this graphic novel. I feel like she was so insufferable, and I don't know if that was the author's intention, but some of the things that this love interest was saying, like, it just pulled me completely out of the story because I was like, I actually really liked our main character Belle, but the fact that she was so like into this person that was really just not a good person, I just really did not like that part of the story at all. I also felt like the ending of this book was super rushed. I feel like everything kind of just happened all of a sudden, and I just don't think that it was very believable, and like that would not have actually played out that way. So there was just a lot not really working for me with this one, and I ended up giving this one a 2.5 stars out of 5. Then a pretty disappointing read for me, as I was expecting so much, because I have heard quite a few of my friends actually have very high praise for this book, and that is Falling by TJ Newman. This is definitely a me issue and not the book's issue, I don't think. Although I feel like there are some problematic things in this book, but that is a discussion for a different time. This, we are essentially following a pilot whose family has been kidnapped, and the only way to save his family is if he ends up crashing the plane that he is flying. That in a nutshell is the plot of this book, and I feel like if you are into action movies that you would very much enjoy this book. For me personally, I am not an action movie girly. Like, they really just don't really do it for me. I feel like I need some like suspense and drama in my movies, and this, although it was suspenseful, I just feel like it read exactly as if I was watching a movie. It 100% makes sense that this is going to be a major motion picture, because again, this just read exactly like a movie. I feel like my expectations were just a little bit hindered for this book, but I just really didn't end up enjoying this one too much, and I ended up giving this one a 2.5 stars out of 5. Then another book I had quite high hopes for, and this was just a huge letdown, and that is All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker. I had seen the reviews on this book, and this was getting such high praise, and for some reason I was just not able to connect to this book at all, which is a huge bummer because this book is like almost 700 pages, so I just slogged through this book. This is essentially a mystery and thriller. There is a little bit of a love story going on in here as well. We are following a character named Patch, who one day, there is a daughter of a very like wealthy family that is targeted. She is going to be taken, and Patch intercepts that and kind of saves her life. And then we are reading different perspectives. Again, like I said, there is a bit of a love story in here as well. And then this spans through a couple of decades, I believe, if I remember correctly. One of the main issues I had with this is that the writing style was very hard to get into. I feel like this author does a lot of explaining. It's almost like showing and not telling. It was just very drawn out, and I feel like if you have read this book, then you know what kind of writing style I am talking about. This, I feel like, could have 100% been cut down by like 200 pages because the descriptions and the things that he was writing about, I feel like really just did not add to the story at all. The chapters also ended very abruptly. Like, I feel like the story just did not piece together. Like, if this was a puzzle, I feel like there would be some missing pieces. Not that there are unanswered questions, but just the fact that after some of the chapters, like, things just felt like they were unsaid, and it was just very confusing to my little brain personally. The overall twist in this book and the motivations of our characters just felt so unbelievable, and also just really dumb, if I'm being honest. Like, there is a serial killer in this town, and people are holding on to information about this, and I don't want to spoil anything, but it just felt like if you knew something, you would come forward, and the reasonings that people didn't come forward just really irked me, and it just did not make sense. So for all of those reasons, I did end up giving this one a 2.5 stars out of 5. Again, just a very disappointing one, as I did see very positive reviews for this one. Next, I have A Talent for Murder by Peter Swanson. This is an adult mystery and thriller where we are following a newlywed couple. The wife in this marriage starts to believe that her husband may be a murderer. That is the basic plot of this book. This, I also had no idea was part of a series of Peter Swanson's. I believe this is the third book in A Kind Worth Killing, so I actually haven't read the second book of that. I do own it, but I did not realize that this was part of that series, because this just really doesn't give those vibes at all. Because the first one one is called A Kind Worth Killing. The second one is called A Kind Worth Saving, I believe, and then A Talent for Murder. I really just had no idea that this was part of that series. I was actually quite enjoying this book when I started reading it. I was pretty captivated and I was very much intrigued as to what was going on and how this woman's husband was involved, because there were some very sketchy things that were pointing to him. I don't think that this was necessarily bad, and I actually really liked the writing style, and I think that this was, if I remember correctly, told in different parts. So part one, you get a certain block of information, and then each subsequent part you also get a little bit more, and you get different perspectives and different characters, and more players start entering the game. So I did actually really like that, but in the end I just feel like I was a little bit underwhelmed with this one, so I ended up giving this one a 2.5 stars out of 5. The next book I have is Dollhouse by Andrew McManaman. This again I did read for Tackle My TBR episode 8, so I will leave that episode linked down below for you to get my full in-depth thoughts, as I will not share them with you here. But essentially this is an adult thriller. It's kind of like in the horror category as well, where 6 strangers wake up in this house and they have no idea how they got there. We then follow each of their perspectives, get a little bit of background on each of the characters, and then see how they navigate living in this house. I feel like this book was just okay for me. I feel like the ending is something that I have seen done quite a bit, so that kind of hindered my enjoyment. Again, full thoughts for that episode of Tackle My TBR, but I ended up giving this one a 2.5 stars as well. Then I read The Mystery Guest by Nita Pross. This was actually the last book that I read in the month of January. For those of you who do not know, this is a mystery and thriller. This is book 2 in the Molly Maid series. Yes, it is a series that involves a character named Molly who is a maid. You can read them as standalones though, but a lot of the characters from book 1 do kind of transfer over into this book. In this mystery, we are following the murder of an author that dies at this hotel where our maid works at. There's really not much more that you need to know about the plot other than it is like a murder mystery. There was nothing really wrong with this book, but I just feel like the things that I absolutely loved about book 1 kind of just started to annoy me in book 2. So in this series, we do follow a maid named Molly, as I mentioned, and she is just such a interesting character. She has a lot of like interesting quirks about her, and I really did like her in book 1. I thought that she was super funny, and I really liked everything that she represented, but in this book, I just feel like her spark and the things that I really liked about her just kind of diminished in this book. I don't know what it was. This was just a very average read for me, and I ended up giving this one a 2.75 stars out of 5. The next book I have to talk about is House of Glass by Sarah Pekkanen. This is an adult mystery and thriller. So the story here is there is a 9-year-old girl whose parents are getting divorced. In the midst of this divorce, one of their nannies ends up getting murdered. This 9-year-old girl does not talk, and there is an attorney who becomes our main character in this book that is appointed to this household to essentially help and deal with the parents' divorce and to see who is better suited to take care of this 9-year-old girl. This was just a very average mystery and thriller for me. If you are looking for something that is quick and easy and the premise of that book sounds good to you, I would definitely recommend this. This was just middle of the road for me. I pretty much listened to this entire audiobook as I was driving to one of my best friend's house who lives quite a ways away from me. She's about 2.5 hours away from me, so I was able to listen to most of this book going there and then driving home. It was easy to focus on. I was able to keep track of the story, but I just feel like it was just very middle of the road. I really don't even have many thoughts on it, as this is just a classic mystery and thriller. If you do like mystery and thrillers that involve nannies, rich people drama, and a young child that does not really speak, then I definitely would recommend this. For me, I did end up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. Nothing wrong with it, but nothing that really stands out to me. Then I picked up The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. This is a contemporary romance novel. I'm sure you guys all know what this is about, but essentially we are following our main character, Jeannie, whose aunt basically gives her this pumpkin spice cafe. Then there is like a whole mystery happening where she is hearing things and she is not sure what this is. So she enlists the help of this very grumpy farmer, Logan, and the two of them obviously form a romantic connection. Again, this is a very cozy book. I would 100% recommend reading this in and around the fall season. This is exactly what I was expecting from it. I really think that this met my expectations perfectly. I looked at this book, I had heard about this book, and I was like, this is going to be such an average read for me. I feel like I'm going to enjoy myself, but I don't think it's going to be anything stand out, and that is exactly what I got from it. So it definitely delivered on that, and I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. I will definitely be continuing on with the series because, like I said, this was just so cozy and just absolutely perfect and just such an easy listen. The next book I read is Faebound by Sarah El Arifi. This is an adult fantasy, but it definitely reads a lot more YA to me, but that is neither here nor there. We are following two sisters, Yurin and Lettel, and Yurin is basically this warrior. She knows that she is going to live her life on the battlefield. She knows she's going to die on the battlefield, and her sister is much more into prophecies and the whole idea of diviners. Then we follow a fatal mistake that takes place that basically sends both sisters from the Elven lands into the Fey lands, and they meet a bunch of different characters there. This was a buddy read for me. I did buddy read this with my bestie Valisa here on BookTube, and both of us had very, very similar feelings on this book. We both felt like the romance in this book was just not very necessary at all. We also felt like this read very YA, which there is no problem with that, but we just thought that we were signing up for an adult book, and this just felt a lot more YA. I am still kind of on the fence as to whether or not I am going to continue the series. I am pretty sure that book 2 comes out very, very soon, but I am again still on the fence whether or not I will be picking it up. This was just such an average read for me. It was fine, but I feel like there just could have been so much more that took place, and I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars as well. The next book I have here is Baby Teeth by Zoe Stage. This is like a horror thriller book where we are following a relationship between a mother and daughter. The mother is kind of regretting becoming a mother, and the daughter is refusing to speak and is just trying to make her mother's life a living hell, essentially. This I also read for Tackle My TBR episode 8, so I will leave that again linked down below in the description if you want my full in-depth thoughts, but I did end up giving this one a 3.25 stars out of 5. Following that, another book that I also read for Tackle My TBR episode 8, and that is Funny Feelings by Tara DeWitt. This is an adult romance novel. We are following our main character, Farley, who is a stand-up comedian. She works for a man named Meyer, who is kind of her secret crush. She hasn't really told him about her feelings, and Meyer is a single dad. There is a single dad trope going on in here. She basically gets afforded the opportunity to further her career, but in order to do so, she has to fake date Meyer, who is also her boss. Again, fake dating trope, single dad trope. This was really, really fun. I definitely will read more from Tara DeWitt in the future, and I ended up giving this one a 3.75 stars out of 5. The next book I have to talk about is Dead of Winter by Darcy Coates. This is a adult horror novel. We are following our main character, Krista, who joins a tour group that is heading into the Rocky Mountains. While they are on this trek, there is like a very bad snowstorm that comes in and basically derails their plans, and the entire group has to take shelter in this little cabin. While at this cabin, there are people who end up getting murdered, so it is very much a like whodunit situation. What is going on? Who is the person that we cannot trust in this group? I actually had such a good time with this book. So right from the beginning, we jump right into the action. The author doesn't really take any time to explain kind of anything that's going on. We jump right into this tour group that is hiking to get to the Rocky Mountains, and the snowstorm happens immediately at the very beginning. I was able to determine who the killer was very, very early on in this book. I feel like it is quite obvious, and after reading reviews, I feel like everybody kind of has the exact same thoughts on this, but that actually did not hinder my enjoyment at all of this book. I absolutely think that this book delivered on all of the like cozy cabin vibes, the like isolated cabin, whole snowy mountain theme. I absolutely thought that the vibes of this book were everything. I feel like you need to read this book in the winter because it just gives you all of the vibes. Again, even though it was easy to figure out who the killer was, it did not hinder my enjoyment because I really just wanted to continue reading this book, and I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. After that, I did decide to pick up the last book in the Bill Hodges trilogy. I'm not actually sure what the trilogy is called, but it is the like Mr. Mercedes trilogy, and that is End of Watch by Stephen King. This was the last book that I needed to read in that trilogy, and this book definitely did not disappoint. I really, really enjoyed my reading experience of this. So in book 1, we are following the same characters from this. So we are following a detective named Bill Hodge. He teams up with some other characters as well. Like I said, they do make appearances in this book here. The more that I think about it, I definitely think that you have to actually read them in order because I feel like you would be so confused as to what's going on in this third book, but it is definitely worth the read. I think that this is such a fun trilogy. This book specifically had some supernatural elements, which I was warned about. I believe my friend Mark here on BookTube, I will leave his channel linked down below. He was talking about this and said that there was a supernatural element, but that it actually did not like hinder his enjoyment. And I have to 100% agree with that. I think that this was done so well. There is like a game aspect to this. So if you are like into video games, I feel like you would get a little bit of added enjoyment with this just because I think that it was done so well. I think that Stephen King is just such a genius. I absolutely love the way that his brain works, and I feel like his writing and his storytelling just clicks so well with my brain. Highly recommend this trilogy, and I did end up giving this last installment a 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I have to talk about is The Hitchcock Hotel by Stephanie Warble. This is an adult mystery and thriller. This we are following our main character Alfred, who has been running a hotel called the Hitchcock Hotel for a year, so it is coming up on the anniversary of it opening. This hotel does pay homage to Alfred Hitchcock himself. Alfred does decide that to celebrate the 1-year anniversary, he wants to invite all of his old friends from this old film class that he had. So he does invite all of them, they show up, and then a lot of secrets start to get revealed because there is something that they were hiding that happened back when they were in this film class. This book was such a pleasant surprise. I absolutely had such a fun time listening to this book. I think that I listened to it all in one sitting while I was doing a puzzle, and I highly recommend listening to the audiobook. I was 100% immersed in the story. I did really like all of the mentions to Alfred Hitchcock and specifically Psycho. I feel like this book wrapped up really nice. I did like the twist. I think that it was like short and sweet, but also made sense to me. And yeah, if you are looking for a mystery and thriller that has a lot of Alfred Hitchcock vibes, then I would 100% recommend this one. And I ended up giving this one a 4.25 stars out of 5. The next book I have to talk about is The Grace Year by Kim Liggett. This is a YA dystopian novel. We are following our main character, Tierney, who is part of this society where when a girl turns 16 years old, it is basically called the Grace Year, where they send these girls out into the wild to unleash this like magic. The catch here is that not all of the girls that go into the woods to release their magic come back alive. This was just such a cool take on the whole like dystopian vibe. I do believe a lot of people compare this to The Handmaid's Tale, which I have actually never read, but I would be very interested to see the comparisons here. I actually really had a good time with this. I didn't really know what to expect going in, but there is a shift in the plot that happens about like 3/4 of the way through, and I was just like all here for it. I absolutely had such a fun time with this book. This is one that I would really consider rereading just because I did really like the way that the story went, and I did really like the underlying messages in here. I think I was listening to an interview that the author did, and just her speaking of like the messages in here about young girls, I think was just very powerful, and I personally really enjoyed it, and I did end up giving this one a 4.25 stars out of 5. The next book I have to talk about is Only the Beautiful by Susan Meisner. This is an adult historical fiction where we are following our main character, who I believe is 16 at the time, where both of her parents are involved in a very tragic accident. They end up dying, and she has to go and live with this family that takes her in. While she is there, she does end up getting pregnant. The people that took her in say that she can no longer live there as she has fallen pregnant, and then she gets sent to this school for like unwed girls. There is a lot that takes place at that school, and this book is told in different timelines as well. So you do get past chapters and then you get present. You also do get introduced to a new character like at the part 2 mark of this book, or it was part 3, I don't remember. And that part of the book was also very interesting to me. I really liked the way that this story was told. We do get, again, past and present chapters, and we also get different perspectives. I did have a theory about this book in and around the chapter 6 mark, and that theory did come true, and I did find out very soon afterwards. So it's not like if you figure this out that it hinders your enjoyment at all of the book, because that is actually revealed quite early, and there is still so much more of the story that is taking place. I think that this story was just so beautifully written, and the story is very heartbreaking, and if you are a fan of historical fiction, I would definitely put this on your TBR because it was just a very good and surprising book to me. I would have never picked this up had it not been for my TBR game, selecting it randomly from my Goodreads recommendations. So I highly recommend this, and I ended up giving this one a 4.5 stars out of 5. The next book I have is A Conjuring of Light by V.E. Schwab. This is the third book in the Darker Shade of Magic trilogy. This I also read for Tackle My TBR episode 8, so I will not harp too much on this. This was my favorite book that I read for that video, and I did end up giving this one a 4.5 stars out of 5. The next book I have to talk about is Something is Killing the Children, Volume 6 by James Tynion. This graphic novel series I have talked about quite a bit on my channel, so again, I am not going to harp too much on this. We are essentially following our main character, Erica Slaughter, who is able to see monsters that are haunting children. That was like a mix between hunt and haunt, but both are true. Again, this is definitely going down as one of my all-time favorite graphic novel series. I feel like for this one specifically, I don't feel like we got too much more of the story. I don't feel like there was much movement in the story, which makes me feel like this series is going to come to a conclusion soon. I am not sure how many volumes are being planned for this series, but I do feel like the way that the story is, that we can get to a conclusion soon, and I did end up giving this book a 5 out of 5 stars. And finally, the last book that I have to talk about, my favorite read for the month of January. I feel like this is going to be one of my all-time favorite books ever. So I am happy that I was able to get an all-time favorite, but I feel like the rest of the year is just going to be a disappointment after reading this book, and that is American Rapture by C.J. Lead. This is an adult horror novel where we are following the spread of a virus. This virus has a little bit of a twist on it. It makes people feral with lust. So there's a lot of lusty things that are going on with this virus. And then we do follow our main character, Sophie, who is basically very sheltered. She is very heavily into her religion. She is a Catholic girl, and she ends up trying to save her brother who was sent away, all while this virus is spreading through the world. I don't know if I would recommend this to a lot of people because I feel like the type of book that this is and the subject matter that is in here is for a specific type of reader. A lot of the times, the way that this book was written doesn't really work for me. If you have read this book, then you kind of know that you aren't really told information, but you understand what is happening and you understand what the author is trying to say, even though like the words in here don't specifically say that. Those type of books usually don't work for me, but for some reason, I was just so captivated with this story. I had such a fun time reading it. This was the type of book where once I stopped reading it, I just wanted to pick it back up and figure out what was going on. And when I tell you that you need to be prepared to have your heart like ripped out of your chest when you read this book, then please believe me. Read trigger warnings if there are certain things that are going to bother you if you do decide to pick this up, because like I said, there is a lot that goes on in here that I feel like warrants a trigger warning. I tabbed this book so much. If you guys can see also, like I matched the tabs like so perfect to the cover, I feel like. And yeah, I am just so happy that I ended up actually reading this book in the month of January. I feel like every other book I read this year is going to be a disappointment compared to this book, which is probably the only negative thing that I will say, but I absolutely loved it. If it sounds interesting to you and the premise kind of sounds like something that you would like, then I would 100% recommend picking it up, but the writing style is definitely something to get used to. It doesn't usually work for me, but it definitely did in this case, and I 100% was obsessed with this book. This is going down as one of my all-time favorites, and I ended up giving this one a 5 out of 5 stars. So that is going to be it for my January wrap-up. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below in the comments what your best book that you read in January, or let me know if you are planning to read any of the books that I talked about in this wrap-up. That is it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching. If you did make it to the end of this video, let me know by leaving a dog emoji in the comments to represent the dog in American Rapture. If you know, you know. If you did like today's video, I would also love it if you hit that thumbs up like button. And as always, if you are new here, I would love to have you stick around. So please hit that subscribe button, and I will see you guys all in my next one. Bye.